Hi guys, Happy New Year and welcome back to Prayer and Penguins. Today we're going to be talking about my absolute favourite books that I read in 2023, as well as some of my bookish statistics from all the books that I read throughout the year, because I just really love statistics and looking at all this stuff and recording the books that I've read and kind of finding out these fun stats at the end of the year. I'll pop some graphs and books and stats up on the screen as well for those of you who also love this kind of thing. So we'll whiz through the reading stats and then we'll get into the top 10. So do keep watching if that is what you are here to see. So let's just get straight into the stats. So in 2023, I read 62 books, and that does include 3 DNFs, 3 books that I did not finish. Personally, I do include DNFs in the amount of books that I've read because I spent time reading those books. A lot of them I spent significant time reading or reading part of before deciding to DNF. I do obviously only include the number of pages I actually read in my page number, but the actual books, they count as part of my books read, okay? You can start that argument if you like in the comments, but I don't think you're going to change my mind. But that does bring us on to the amount of pages that I read, which was 20,940. And some quick maths tells me that that means my average book length was 338 pages, which feels fairly standard length of a book. Makes sense. Of those 62 books, 4 of these were rereads. 3 of them were a series that I've read in previous years, and then 1 of them was a book that I read initially this year and then reread it this year. When it comes to how I read these books, a whopping 51.6% of these books were audiobooks, which I'm not massively surprised by. I am surprised it's quite that high, but I knew it was going to be the highest because I read a lot of audiobooks. I read them kind of as I'm going to sleep, as I'm driving, just kind of whenever. So that definitely has made up a big part of my reading in the last year. Then 37.1% of the books were ebooks, so books I read on my phone. And then just 11.3% of the books I read were physical reads. So that's probably the lowest percentage-wise that I've ever read of physical books. Usually I really like having a physical book and reading a physical book, but with a young child I definitely kind of stopped reading physical books so much because it's really hard to like hold it in one hand if I'm doing something else. And also to read a physical book I need quite a good light, particularly with my eyesight. So on a phone that light is just there and I can read it wherever. I can read it when it's quite dark, whereas a physical book I can't. Then we come to my most read genres for 2023, and mystery was definitely the highest, followed by romance, which was a bit of a surprise to me. That definitely came in a bit later in the year. And then thrillers came third because I do split out mystery and thrillers. After those top 3 we do get into a bit more of a mishmash of everything else. So I think fantasy is the next highest, and then we've got a bit of contemporary, a bit of poetry, a bit of Christian books, some non-fiction, sci-fi, historical, humour, literary, just a little bit of everything in there. In terms of different authors, my 62 books were read against 43 different authors, which does mean that there were quite a few authors that I read multiple books from, either in the same series or just exploring their backlog. You'll see when we get into the top 10 that there are some series in there where I read the whole series this year. Then of my 62 books that I read, 3 of them were books that have been translated into English. And I do want this one to be higher next year. I do have quite a lot of translated books that I want to get to. And then during 2023, I also had 15 5-star books, which I'm actually very happy with. That's what, just under 25% of my books that I read in 2023 were 5-star. That seems very good to me. And then our final stats are about series. So in 2023 I started 13 different series, and in 2023 I finished 5 different series, which means that there are at least 8 series that I have not finished, having started them in 2023. So that's probably something we should address in 2024 and try and finish off those series if we can. We'll see how that goes. So now let's get into my top 10 favourite books of 2023. I am going to start with a couple of honourable mentions, so really this isn't a top 10, it's like a top 12, but shh, These are just honourable mentions that I wanted to mention because I really enjoyed them this year, and they are both series actually. The first series that I wanted to mention is the Kiss River series by Diane Chamberlain, and this is, I don't even know what genre you would kind of categorise this as. It has some contemporary, it has some mystery kind of elements, it definitely has romance to it. It has a little bit of historical at some points. It's just kind of a bit of everything. But there are 3 books in this trilogy. One kind of follows the mum and dad and then some other characters kind of that generation. Then the next book is quite a few years later when the son is older, and it kind of follows the son and his relationship. And then the 3rd book is kind of fairly soon after that one and follows the daughter. And each book is quite distinctly separate and follows their own storyline, but they all revolve around this lighthouse that is part of the family's history, and it kind of explores the family's connection to this lighthouse and why this lighthouse is kind of pulling all these stories together. But to me, I just really loved the characters in this series and how kind of connected to the characters you got as you were kind of exploring what this all meant and how it was all connected. And it was really interesting to see these kids that were quite young kids in the first book now grown up, and seeing how like the events of the first book impacted their life moving forwards. My other honourable mention is The Summer I Turned Pretty. Now, I didn't necessarily give these books a massively high rating. I think they were like 3.5, 4 and 4.5 maybe, or maybe less than that, maybe 3.5 and 4, something along those lines. Not massively high, but like decent books. But I think here my honourable mention is reading them alongside watching the series. I really loved these series on TV, and I really felt that kind of doing the two together, having the book and having the TV show, really added a lot to those characters and probably made me like the books a lot more than I would have done without the TV series, because I felt like the characters had a lot more depth and you kind of felt a lot more connected to those characters in the TV show, which then added that to the book, if that makes any sense. But basically, the TV show really aided the reading experience of those books. Okay, so at number 10 we have Dial A For Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. And this is a kind of cosy mystery that follows a woman who accidentally kills her blind date and then has to call in her aunties to come and help her deal with this situation. To make things more complicated, they also have like a wedding business together, her and all of these aunties, and it just kind of follows how they are dealing with the situation, what they're going to do, how they're getting out of this mess or not out of this mess, as the case may be. And I found this very funny and definitely kind of a good starting point going into this kind of cozy mystery type genre. Book number 9 is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Ben Stevenson. And this, I think you possibly would also categorise this as a cosy mystery. Definitely in the mystery genre. But this follows a family reunion. As the title suggests, everyone in the family has killed someone. And you're reading from the perspective of one of these family members who's kind of telling each person's story as you're kind of unfolding this mystery as to what's happening. I can't 100% remember what is a spoiler and what is not a spoiler here. This didn't end up being kind of exactly what I was expecting. It was actually much more kind of clever and unpacking things as you were going and kind of telling these different stories and kind of how they were all woven together to kind of unfurl this mystery. Book number 8 is Everything You Ever Wanted by Louisa Salma, and this one was quite a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting to love this, and actually I found the beginning of the book quite kind of slow going, but kind of by the end I was finding it really gripping and really just kind of thought-provoking in lots of different ways. But this book is a sci-fi and it follows this planet if we had discovered a way to send people to another planet. And people are given the opportunity to apply, to go on this programme, to be able to go and live on this other planet and stay there. And it was going to be featured on the TV show, but they would be able to go to this other planet, but there was no way of getting back. And this woman that we're following applies to be part of this, applies to leave, wants to go and live on this other planet. And it just kind of explores a lot of different things, a lot of the kind of mundanity of life, a lot of kind of why someone might want to go to another planet. It explores things like mental health, and then it also explores kind of the impact of going and whether that was a good idea or not. And actually what is life like in this other planet. It kind of looks at fame and kind of that TV show element of being watched, as well as, again, some of the kind of mental health aspects that come with that as well. And I just feel like this book touched on so many different things, so many thought-provoking different things, and kind of just really explored them in a really interesting way. Book number 7 is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and this is a YA book that explores a young boy whose brother has just been killed, and he is riding the elevator down from his apartment down to the ground floor to go and get his revenge, essentially. But at each floor, a different person, a different family member, a different someone meets him on this elevator and is kind of talking to him and sharing different things with him and kind of helping him to work through these different things to decide whether he is going to go and get revenge or not. And this is such a quick read. I read this in probably a couple of hours, if that, maybe 1 hour. But it is really hard hitting and again covers a lot of big topics. It's looking at kind of gun crime, gang violence, that kind of never-ending cycle of revenge and someone else getting revenge, someone else getting revenge, and kind of the harm and ripple effect of these kind of crimes. It looks at fatherhood and the impact of not having a father and kind of family relationships. And I just thought it was a really clever way of kind of exploring all of those topics. Book number 6 was Ready Player One, and I know I'm very late to the party to only just now be reading this book, but it was brilliant. It was a fantastic book. This is a sci-fi book set in the future when someone has created this game, this virtual reality world that you can go into and kind of live your life almost completely in this world. And it follows this young boy who is trying to complete this challenge that has been set by the founder of the game to answer these different clues and complete different challenges to complete this task, this game. And then whoever completes the game first kind of inherits this whole world. And I think this whole world that they created in this book is so clever. There's so much detail to it, so much thought gone into it. And I also just really like the characters and the friendships that they had in this book and kind of how they work together and how they're kind of competing against each other. And it was just a really fun and easy book to read and a great world to be in. Book number 5 is Your Word or Mine by Leah Middleton. And in this book we are following a woman who, when she was, I believe, 16, was attacked by a man. He kind of got off on a technicality in part of the trial because of how some evidence was handled. Now, years later, she is now a lawyer herself, and she comes across this man again who is now a victim in one of the cases that she is working on, and he's accused this young girl of stabbing him. She is pleading guilty to this, but this woman just doesn't believe that's the end of the story. She believes there is more going on here and she wants to get to the bottom of it. And this book was incredibly thrilling. It's the kind of book that I had to like turn off the audiobook if I was trying to get to sleep, because I was just staying awake and awake and awake listening to this book, wanting to find out what happened next. It really made me like incredibly tense. Like I could feel myself like tensing up just because you're waiting for this kind of bad thing to happen. And it was incredibly clever as well, because you're following this woman and you're following her kind of trying to unpack this and trying to get to the truth, but at the same time you're also kind of questioning, is she right? Is she kind of mistaken? Is there something else going on here? So you're just kind of doubting everything and not really sure what is going on and what is truth and what is not the truth. Book number 4 is The Unhoneymooners, and this one was definitely quite a surprise to me. Before this I hadn't really read that much romance, and this was kind of the first one that I read in 2023. I really enjoyed it and really just found it a lot more fun than I was expecting. But at the beginning of this book there is a wedding, and pretty much everyone at this wedding gets food poisoning, apart from the sister of the bride and the brother of the groom. They are the only 2 people who haven't eaten from this buffet and therefore don't get food poisoning. And because the honeymoon is a non-refundable trip, those 2 end up deciding that they are going to go on this honeymoon and kind of, even though they dislike each other, are going to try and just kind of have separate holidays on this honeymoon. And obviously kind of funny things ensue, romance ensues. It's obviously a bit of your kind of typical enemies to lovers type story, but it is just a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun reading it. I really enjoyed kind of seeing their relationship build, and just some kind of the added funny elements of them pretending to be on this honeymoon together while they disliked each other. They bump into her new boss, they see his ex-girlfriend. There's just kind of these added elements of them having to pretend that they're married. And now we come to book number 3, which is The Safest Lies by Megan Miranda. And this was another big surprise for me. This was just a random audiobook that I found on Libby and decided to listen to because I wasn't sure what to listen to next. And I ended up really loving it. This is a kind of very fast-paced thriller that centres around this girl whose mother kind of went through something very traumatic when she was younger and is now very paranoid, very scared, very kind of protective of herself and her daughter, keeps them very secluded. And it just explores some events that happen when first the girl is in a car crash and this boy from her class, who's also kind of a volunteer firefighter, ends up rescuing her from her car as it dangles off this cliff. And that kind of news story goes a bit kind of public and her name and her face are out there, and obviously her mum gets very worried about this, and then her mum disappears, and it's about this girl kind of trying to work out where her mum has gone and kind of defend her house from these people that seem to be coming to get her. And this book literally takes place probably over a couple of days, with most of it happening within kind of one night. But it's just really gripping and kind of feels like there's constantly something happening, even though when you look back at it, it's been such a short time frame of what's going on. And you have kind of her friends and her neighbours and these other people that are kind of part of her life that end up kind of dragged into this mess as well. And I don't really know how else to describe this book without kind of giving spoilers or like just telling you what happens throughout it all. But it was just really fast-paced, really thrilling, and just quite a big surprise to me. Okay, so book number 2 is actually a whole series, and this is the One of Us Is Lying series. And I think my favourite one is actually One of Us Is Back, the third and final book in this trilogy. But we have One of Us Is Lying, One of Us Is Next, and One of Us Is Back. And I actually watched the TV show of One of Us Is Lying first, and I would actually recommend doing it that way around personally, because I know a lot of people who read it first were then disappointed by the TV show, but I love the TV show and then also love the books. So that would be the way that I recommend doing it. But One of Us Is Lying, the first book, follows a group of kids who are all put in detention together, and then one boy in that detention dies, and they are all suspects and they're all trying to work out what's going on. Can they trust each other? What is happening here? Why were they even in detention in the first place? Did one of them kill him? And it kind of goes from there. And obviously I can't say too much about books 2 and 3 without kind of giving spoilers to book 1. They follow along, but books 2 and 3 also bring in some different characters as well. And I just really love this whole series. It's a YA mystery series. It was super easy to read, super easy to follow along, but I just really enjoyed the characters and getting to know them as they kind of built this kind of weird friendship of being thrown together in this situation. But yeah, all 3 of that trilogy I really enjoyed. And then we come on to number 1, my favourite book of this year. And again, this is actually a series. So this is the Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman. And which book would I say is my favourite book? They all got 5-star from me, but I think my favourite one is the last one, The Last Devil to Die. I did also really enjoy book number 2, The Man Who Died Twice. Those 2 are probably my favourite in the series so far, but I really love all of them. I really love the characters. The characters are obviously kind of the main point of this whole series. If you haven't heard of this series, where have you been? But also it is the Thursday Murder Club, so this is a group of elderly people who live together in this kind of retirement village, and they get together every Thursday to look at kind of cold cases, old murder cases, and see if they can solve them many years later. And then in their kind of local area, someone is murdered, so they decide they are going to take on that case as well and see if they can solve the murder. And they kind of get involved a little bit with the local police, and they do what they can do to try and solve this murder, as well as, in the next few books, other things that happen in their area too. But these books are just so lovely. It just kind of explores so many different themes about human life, about aging, about friendship. It's just the kind of club that you would want to be part of when you are in your 80s. There is a lot of kind of British commentary, British humour that I really appreciated and found funny, but I can see why maybe that might put you off if you don't live in the UK and that humour maybe doesn't work for you. But it is just a lot of fun, and I can't wait for the next books to come out in this series. I believe we're not getting one in 2024, and we've got to wait until 2025, but when that book does come, I'm very excited to see where this all goes next. So those are my top 10 / top 12 books of 2023. I would love to hear what were your favourite books of 2023. Do let me know down in the comments, and maybe I will add them to my 2024 TBR. Were there any of these books that you also had on your top 10 books of 2023? Do we have any in common? Or are you interested in reading any of these books that I've suggested? I will link all of these books down in the description if you'd like to go and find them for yourself. But we do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to see more videos from me and Arnold. We have lots of things planned for 2024. We'll be sharing videos every week all about prayer, exploring the Bible and living out your faith, as well as bookish and motherhood content too. And if you'd like to see my goals for 2024, including my 2024 reading goals, do check out this video right here. And we will see you very soon for a new video. Bye!